You have no idea what has happened in the UK. The UK are the most advanced nation in the entire world when it comes to cryptocurrency. Go away, Dubai, you're not far enough along. Forget about the US, you've done nothing so far. The UK is so far ahead. And the reason I talk about all of this is because not only was the Financial Services and Markets Bill passed through royal assent, signed off by the King, and will go into effect on the 29th of August as it relates to digital settlement assets. Not just that, but we have a new bill that has also gone through the King, been signed off by the King, and will go into effect starting 3 days ago, and another section of it in 2 months. This is the Electronic Trade Finance Bill. Now, I've sat down with Simon Buckingham from the Wales of Wall Street YouTube channel. You must go and subscribe. And we sat down for half an hour and we just talked about this bill and how mind-blowing the implications are. So sit back and relax. We've got about half an hour together here. And after this video, you are truly going to understand why it all starts in London.
We discussed this the other week, ironically, and well, there's 2 points really. There's the coincidental timeframes of all this happening, but also that emphasis that these things don't just happen overnight. They've obviously been thought about for some time. And particularly, obviously, well, those that don't know or aren't in the vicinity of the UK, of course, things can take long in terms of the process, in terms of revisions, especially when it's actually something that's applicable to law. As we've seen, obviously, a few weeks ago with the introduction of cryptocurrency, stablecoins, digital assets, arguably being approved now as use from a retailer's perspective as well as wholesale. Of course, there's going to be a few months of transition of regulation and defining those frameworks. But the fact that law has passed, with this whole trade finance, I mean, this market's huge, absolutely gigantic. But this also affects like the different kind of categories and areas within trade finance. Something that we talk about a lot, and I know you and I do, is that whole even supply chain management. I've been very fortunate to work in various different industries, of which one has been heavily involved in like distribution, and certainly you roll back like 10 years ago, it has improved over time. We've obviously seen the massive introduction of Amazon properly 10 15 years ago in that area. They accelerated things in certain ways, but that kind of like framework, the API side of it, the logistical element, the paperwork in general, customs, all of this stuff now can be tokenized, as we know, smart contracts especially. The fact that this law and bill is passed to digitalize everything is going to speed up significantly that whole entire process, the technologies behind it. We obviously focus on a few of the projects, technologies ourselves in our own portfolios as investment, or at least cover them on the channels. There's a multitude of them. I think one of the big ones recently was obviously Zimfin's XDC token in particular. That saw big traction, and rightly so. They cover the public and the private sectors with their hybrid blockchain technology, but heavily involved with the trade financial side of things. We know Andre Carstman is heavily involved in that, especially through the trade finance organizations that are out there as well. So there's all these things in play, the technologies, exactly as what you just said. There's a short-term burst. My thought process is that, okay, the UK has taken some big steps in this last month. Yes, they've been ongoing for a long time, and they've now come into law or practice, or certainly got the King's assent or approval. When this occurs across Europe, whether that be country by country or as continents or regions, this is where we're going to see the giant utility and the giant mass income of people going, wow, where do I buy this stuff? Like, who's powering this? Who's powering that? So you can see the snippet of just these things happening in the UK over the last few weeks, what it's done to the market. We're in a winter market, we're in a bear market, all the macro events around the world going on as well that are keeping everything so suppressed. Imagine in a bull cycle, but also the point being is that all these other countries and regions get on board, going, oh, the UK's accelerating quite fast on this bit now, perceivably, and see what that reaction is over time in the long run. To your point.
Yeah. Have you gone into the documents? Because I've been trying to read up on this trade bill. And there was the information was very bitty. I couldn't find like the big document. Granted, I didn't look incredibly deep at it because I knew we were just going to have this conversation and just talk about it.
Yeah.
Um, what I did find interesting though is that there was this basically this bill that's just gone through royal assent, kind of almost secretly. It felt like just kind of went under the radar and just got put through past the king. And we talked about the financial services and markets bill that went through and how important that was.
Mhm.
This is just as important, but it kind of went under the radar. I found that actually Zinfin had submitted a call for evidence, which is essentially saying, you know, here's how we can help solve this
Yeah.
problem that's in this bill, or help facilitate push this bill with our either our knowledge or just our understanding of this
Yeah.
area. I found that to be very interesting because throughout there they basically said how well Zinfin fits this situation.
Yeah.
We saw something similar in, I forget what bill it was. I think it was for the digital pound, where Ripple made a call for evidence type thing. Basically,
Mhm.
it's a sales pitch for Ripple and CBDCs. And for that reason, I mean, I did look around for other calls for evidence. I didn't see any other. Do you know of any others blockchain-based companies that submitted this kind of?
Not necessarily submitted, but I think that's the point of there's never going to be one winner in this whole
Right.
entire space. An entity, if you like, a trade finance. We're talking about multi-trillion dollars worth of value. Then this will supersede itself by 2030, 2032. But now with the introduction of blockchain, I think the statistics that are out there already were just generally organic development. But to have the blockchain ability, certainly from the API, the cloud perspective, we talked about AI. AI is gigantic in this opportunity.
Hmm.
I think it will accelerate even further than they perhaps think. I'm not a giant expert in trade finance for sure, but I think that they perhaps haven't thought about that area being put into place as well to how it will progress. But I mean, to your point, really is that XTC I think is one of definitely the ones that are really upfront with this. I think it's massively helped that they've had the likes of Andre on their kind of membership situation, if you like, because he is part of the trade finance consortiums also. And there's always been articles, whether it be on LinkedIn or in the general media, of him associating these two kind of parties. Here's the solution, here's the and the blockchain solution as well, all in kind of one wrapped package. But I guess one of the points I want to make clear is that there's multitude of technologies and projects around the world in their own vicinities, in their own regions. I mean, I'm not sure where like VeChain, for example, is located at the moment. I know they've moved around a bit office wise, but they're a huge project that a lot of people follow and certainly accumulate the V token and the V4 token for burning purposes. They're heavily related in perhaps the Asian market. And they've got their fingers in a lot of pies over there, and certainly lots of certifications, etc. So I think the beauty of that, and it goes back to our previous conversation the other week, Lewis, is this interoperable perspective. Like all these frameworks, all these different countries and units that are going to be using their own frameworks, their own API systems, their own blockchain systems or chains or whatever. And they all got to talk to each other because the whole aspect of smart contract is talking from one entity to another, utilizing things like KYC, all the data, the AI, the algorithms, you name it, all implanted in this. So instead of those like mundane days or sometimes even months of paperwork, custom tracking, it's now QR codes. It's now AI algorithm based on supply and demand. But all of these things have to talk to each other. So I think it's fantastic that Zinfin has finally, because I do think it's one of the projects out there that's very under the radar.
Yeah.
Not many people talk about it. Because there's dominance in other projects for other reasons, but certainly something I've harped on for a long time is trade finance and certainly supply chain management. You've always got to look at what's the market value of the project that I'm investing in. What's their sector value? And it's absolutely gigantic. And that's not to say they're going to be the only ones, because there will be others jumping in, of course. We've mentioned before, you can look at the likes of Algorand, for example, from the sustainability, the green aspect, certainly the power outage of its transactions per second. XDC boasts a substantial amount of transactions per second compared to a lot of the other chains. But that's all usually based. It's like when you go and buy a car and they tell you can do this amount of miles, but actually in the real world, it's more like this.
Yeah.
You won't know until you're into that traction. So it's going to be a really defining perhaps a year or two, certainly for Zinfin and many other chains, where okay, let's put your words into fruition and see what you're actually capable of doing. So I haven't seen any other companies directly linked with these particular conversations, but there's no doubt in my mind that a load of them have their own pieces to the puzzle in this situation. It's going to be really exciting to see that coming out.
Yeah. And none of it goes into full force without interoperability, because
Yeah,
you actually have to have all the different blockchains doing
absolutely.
their best thing for the system as a whole. I did find it quite interesting. I want to talk about how we know it's blockchain in the bill, because it's not actually very evident in the bill from what I've seen. It might be more on the nose in the full document that I haven't seen.
Yeah.
I did see that there's this law website that I went to look at a kind of a review of everything that happened. It's called kennedyslaw.com. And they're talking about this act, and they're basically saying that Section 1 defines the paper documents covered by the act and provides a number of examples. These include, so this exchange, this trade bill will cover bills of exchange. So that to me on the blockchain is just smart contracts for sales and purchases, promissory notes, is it bills of lading or landing?
I believe it's pronounced lading. Yeah.
Lading. Ship delivery orders, warehouse receipts, mates receipts, marine insurance policies, and cargo insurance certificates. My curiosity was why does that all feel very nautical?
Yeah, well, I think
what's the focus there?
I guess because a big predominant aspect of trade in general is done by ship, for sure. You've got air, of course, and in some aspects train. In my experience within distribution sector, it was always quite interesting to see, okay, you can pay a little more for planes because they're obviously quicker, but then you've also got the sea residual value and this is where forecasting is really important to understand. If you don't understand forecasting, there's loads of really cool articles out there, but generally, and still to this day, majority of companies out there, no matter how big or small the company is, they go, okay, what's our forecast? And particularly with products, predominantly, usually, or materials of items, it could be metals, whatever, you would go in advance based on, okay, what was the trend perhaps last year or the year before? Not necessarily always real-time data. You can go and do some analysis, which again is very manual, because you're like, oh, what's going on over here? There's a battle between these countries, therefore titanium's gone up or lithium's gone up, whatever it is. So the forecasting method is very manual at the moment. It is improving, and some of the top projects or companies out there, certainly that use like cloud data and a bit of AI, is still very new in that space, but you can start to piece together how this is all going to work. So blockchain is very fundamental to this. I'll read a passage in a second from the trade finance site while you were talking. I read that the other day, I'll find it. But the point being is this AI integration, there's an argument to say it reduces the need for people again, as we go into this machine learning world, AI world, which again is another industry that I worked nicely in. It was fantastic to see all that occurring. But when we see the demand and supply mechanism ran through AI based on real-time data, it can then forecast it for you straight ahead and speed that process up. But we're still arguably relying on old transportation system. I can't see that changing really in the next like 10, 20 years, to be honest, because ships do their job. From a sustainability perspective, more and more are becoming hybrid, not necessarily electric, but definitely hybrid, either gas run or whatever. So that will start reflecting from an environmental ESG perspective. That's another topic. But the AI side of it with blockchain, now remember, blockchain is about verification, processing, the transactions per second speeding up, smart contract application. So when you've got a company and a company going, we want to buy this, we want to sell this, rather than all the checks and this, that, and the other, it's just happening within minutes rather than days, and less people involved because it already knows. It already knows what it needs to order, what it needs to pick. The robots are picking them, all of this stuff. It's absolutely fascinating to see that development. And this bill basically allows that to progress and essentially says the UK is ready. Come on, guys, catch up. The point I wanted to just quickly grab for you, Lewis, when you asked whether blockchain was kind of involved. So this is off the Trade Finance Global website. And it's quite ironic here. So this is when the article came out. So Lord Holmes, who's been very heavily involved in this, he calls it the most important bill you have never heard of. This is to your great point that no one's heard of this. It's come out of nowhere. As he believes it'll be the first bill to demonstrate the power and huge potential of new technologies deployed in our common law context. The bit here that's the interesting part about blockchain. Previously, so I've also called it the blockchain bill because in the criteria set out in the bill, ensuring that an electronic document is capable of being subject to exclusive control, and that once transferred, the previous holder should no longer be able to exercise control over the document, can be delivered through distributed ledger, in brackets, or blockchain technologies, although it's quite right that no particular technology is set out in the face of the bill. So to your point, you may have found evidence by XDC and Zinfin's implications toward this, whether it be advisory or a direct integration. The fact of the matter is there's a multitude of technologies, infrastructures that have to be in place for this to work. As I mentioned, cloud, API systems, all the frameworks that need to be put in there. On top of blockchain and AI, this is where it all comes in. And there's no doubt in my head that AI regulation is just around the corner because all the big hype that's going on around it. But for all of this to work, AI needs to work. And in order for AI to work, it needs to be regulated. So I have no doubt in my mind, whether it's in a few months' time or certainly within this remit before 2025, we have to have these come out. Yeah. And it's kind of exciting, a bit scary at the same time. We're talking about jobs, people, but then this massive adoption, the economy speed, the speed at which we can send and receive goods, money, everything. Changes in the whole dynamics of everything. It's quite crazy.
I do wonder how that actually looks at the port, when the goods come in. Do you kind of like come up and you just tap your thing and that's the contract signed and we've received it? How quick will that be to adopt? Like for the people who've been in the industry for 40 years and they're used to doing it a certain way, it's kind of also dependent on their willingness to accept this new world.
Absolutely. I it's kind of like a partial acceptance, but also it's going to be a bit forceful in the sense that this is it. Sorry. And we've seen that everywhere. I mean, I used to work heavily with like independent retailers, and I could see the pattern even 15 years ago that these guys probably aren't going to be around in like 10 years, like the development of everything that's going on digitally. And you only go to Oxford Street in London or Tottenham Court Road that used to be full of independent retailers. They're all gone. They're now apartments and flats. So that comes about as a natural occurrence. And I think that's going to be exactly the same thing with this. I don't know the intricate detail of processing of things. I know for a fact from experience of things like custom delays, all these checks and everything. But that's when the QR code metrics kick in and things like this and the readability of those. What's this product? Where does it come from? What's the transparency? What's the whole entire journey that it's had? And every bit of detail about the product, weight, dimension, size, all of these things, then link that out to the whole supply chain in terms of, okay, someone's picking that container up, then delivering it to the stores, but they know how much weight's in there for the van, everything, blah, blah, blah. A lot of that is already in place. It's just that we now speed it up, and certainly the information is a hell of a lot more accurate than perhaps a manual person going, oh, maybe it's this, let's do that. And then what happens is it gets to customs or the end goal, and it's like, oh, you're going to get overcharged, or we can't process this because it's not showing a matchup of the products and stuff. So again, speeding up that economic process from a logistical perspective, in terms of, they usually have these like little POS devices that scan things, etc. Again, that's something that can just be completely automated and sped up. A port is obviously gigantically busy. I live very, very close in Portsmouth and Southampton, so I see it daily. I see all these containers coming in and I go, where on earth have these all come from and what's in them and how do they pick all this stuff? And I've also been in the industry where I've gone to our warehouses and seen manual picking, this, that, and the other because of orders. And I'm like, wow, that's like a long process, like hundreds of people, thousands of people ordering stuff every day. But then towards the end of my life in distribution, robots were coming in and doing this. And I'm going to the warehouse and these things are just driving along up and down, pick, based on immediate orders. So this moving into here takes that section into something formidable, like beyond what we could probably imagine. I mean, those that work in the industry still and seen this progress will think this is just sliced bread, like it's easy. But the outside, they're going to be sitting there going, this is crazy. And and an end user will have an even better experience, and an experience where it's fully transparent. And especially in a world where more people more than ever are really curious or very aware of, where am I buying this product from? Is it trade friendly? Is it friendly in general? Has the person at the other end been paid fairly and correctly? Again, another huge part of decentralization potential, or blockchain in general, to see that. So it's going to be absolutely gigantic. And the fact is that the UK has stepped forward. It's been in the pipeline for a while, but now, like when I was at the Digital Pound Foundation event the other day, they were talking about tension between countries and governments, etc., of who's going to get there first. And there's a perception now that in the last month or two, the UK has stamped its foot and authority on two gigantic markets. And now we wait for the others, because when that happens over this maybe 12 to 18-month period, which leads to all the other stuff, CBDCs, everything like that, we get the awakening from everyone. The boredom disappears and everyone jumps into the market and wants to know, oh, trade finance bill, who's powering that? Go and research stuff, go and watch YouTube, this, that, and the other, and that's how it all explodes, doesn't it? As we've seen in the past.
It's such a granular approach.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've been so attentive to a change happening in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, being part of this journey of discovery is really understanding the scale and the detail required to put such a change into place. It's not a flick of the switch, really, like from speculation to utility. It's like, oh, we have to know exactly how the digitized version of what did they call it? A bill of lading.
Mm-hmm.
We need to know exactly how that looks,
mm-hmm.
and the regulations and laws around that specific thing. And you extrapolate that to every industry, including other industries, and this collaborative approach of all the blockchains.
It starts to make sense, guys. It starts to make sense.
Yeah.
Once all these pieces are puzzling together, people are finally understanding the interoperability potential and requirement, but also utility, the ecosystem, and then looking at, oh, actually, all these chains, there isn't going to be one winner. They have to operate all together. How's that going to work? So that's how it all completes this circle of like each individual sector, real estate, supply chain, cars, you name it, everything, physical NFTs, all the spectrum of everything finally formulating itself. And I talk a lot about things like direct to cyclic graph technology, which is what Hedera builds itself on, IOTA, a couple of others, Constellation, and that's the mechanism of power talking to each other. But then you need interoperability, where we talk about the likes of Quant, for example, that pulls everything together, transactions, cross borders, XRP. This is where it gets mind-blowing, because you can actually sit there almost drawing your own map going, oh, well, they take care of this area, they take care of this area, and all of a sudden you've got a big gigantic web, hence why behind me I've got this wonderful thing, because that's the whole point. But then also they need to talk to each other and perhaps remove that point of failure they have to bypass. And how do they do that? And this is where it all becomes very exciting and interesting. Again, as I said, potentially scary, that we don't do this too fast and it starts taking over all the other things that we're trying to focus on as a world. But it's going to be huge. And as I said earlier, it's about when you're investing and you're looking at projects, you want to know what sectors they're in, but then find out how much is that sector value worth. And in particular with trade finance, and that's not even talking about trade finance or trade tokenization, is going to be huge, a fractionalization, everything, and how it all links together. This is where the possibilities magnify themselves, and you as an investor can really ascertain, what am I investing in, and is it going to be worth it in the future? This isn't going to happen overnight, but certainly to say 5, 10, 15, 20 years, this is going to be substantial. This is a fourth industrial revolution. This comes once in a lifetime.
Yeah. And I'd like to, talk about the one thing that really struck me a few months ago when I talked to Jimmy Valley, is because he's worked in energy for quite a while. He was saying how blockchain would revolutionize energy to such a degree to where you're taking stuff out the ground And as it comes out the ground, it's already on the blockchain. It's
Yeah.
already kind of tokenized. And
Yeah.
as it goes through the pipe, even if you're talking about
Mhm.
oil and
Yeah.
the different, if it goes right, it turns into X type of oil. If it goes left, it gets
Yeah.
processed into a different type of oil. And as it hits these thresholds in the pipes, people are getting paid for their services before.
Yeah.
And it's all that instantaneous thing. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, being able to,
Simultaneous automation ahead of time, AI data driven, exactly that. Web3 hotspots are coming where you can convert your solar energy or wind energy to carbon credits that you can pass on to other if you've got surplus energy. And there's great projects. Energy Web Foundation, I cover quite a bit. I talk about that a lot. Again, part of that whole infrastructure of what we just talked about, the likes of Power Ledger. These guys have already got giant case studies in a physical format. They've
right,
created buildings and apartment structures, skyscrapers in Australia and a couple of other places that are fully dependent on blockchain technology in the sense of how they source the energy and then spew it out if there's excess. And this is how it all shares the energy. This is how the ESG communication gets furthered out as well, even to the point where processing power of laptops and PCs can be passed on to other people across the other side of the world. This is just how mind-blowing it is, and that's just very, very much scratching the surface. But your point is exact there, that the energy market in itself is a, we'll probably need another video for that. It's a giant
I know
topic.
it's humongous. And when I think about like this mic I've got here, right?
Yeah,
When you think about this mic's manufacturing, this foam, wherever it, I don't know what foam is even made of, but you know, the moment it was created on the machine it was created, this stuff can all be logged on the
yeah,
blockchain. So if you're trying to make
exactly.
strategic purchase decisions based on your own morals and values, whatever, let's say you're trying to be eco-friendly, you could, I can imagine an interface on a website where you kind of, it says Rode mic, this is the one I'm buying, and you click the ingredient, the material that it's made of, and it goes through to a subcategory of where that was made, the location, where it was formed.
Everything,
Go even
everything.
further and you can see how kind of, if this is the agenda that you're following, then you
Yeah,
know how green that product
yeah,
is across the whole
exactly.
line.
It's all on narrative. It's all on
Yeah,
narrative, and again, you covered this in your last video. The coincidence, the timing of everything is now, and putting those stepping stones in place for the coming months, the coming years across the world. It's gonna change everything,
yeah,
and speed everything up. How the implication of the economy is perceived to increase significantly, even higher than they ever anticipated before, will remain to be seen. But the building blocks are there. It's
yeah,
going to be very exciting.
yeah. No, it actually, it really, really is. It's you kind of have to, these conversations that I've had with you in particular have brought me from, I'm going to gain financially from my investments, that kind of strategy, that mind space, to actually, you know, that while that might be true, and I think I'm positioned for that, actually it is very exciting,
Yeah,
blockchain. It's not just about like, oh, let's wait for a payday or a bull run. It's like this is actually going to affect absolutely everything in the world, and
absolutely.
that's great.
Regardless of the price in markets, this is now, and it's happening. So,
And
and a lot of
actually,
it,
if you think about it, with the scale to which this is all going,
yeah,
if your assets that you hold are just part of the conversation, there is nothing to worry about.
mm,
Because if this plays out over the next 10 years, which I mean, it is, when this plays out over 10 years, your assets, they're going up. I mean,
yeah,
just because they're the requirement of those assets in the new world, you don't even have to worry about buying, selling, even you don't even have to
exactly,
worry about bull runs. Like, don't
exactly.
even worry. It's just going to go up over time. And uh, that's really, it gives me confidence in the
Yeah,
whole.
it's massive.
Yeah. Thank you for watching this interview. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want us to do more interviews like this, please let me know in the comments. If you want to watch my podcast with other people that I've talked to, other experts, you can click that video below. You can also click the video right above, and that's the one the algorithm thinks is best for you. You can also click my face there to subscribe to this channel and get daily updates about crypto, bills, and all that good stuff. Stay emotionless, and I'll see you in the next one.